And so sharing can be either about the exercise that we just did or about any other element of this process that you want to bring forward from any circumstance.
I'd like to mention something that's been on my mind lately. I've been aware that I've been very judgmental in general, judging everything, everybody, myself. And I'm also aware that that great spacious awareness is not judgmental. And I'd kind of like to get there. And it seems to me that the way I've been going at it has been that when I'm aware that I'm being judgmental, I have to I discipline myself. I say, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to back off from that. But now it seems to me that there's some better way, and that is some inner shift such that judgmentalism doesn't even arise in the first place. In other words, I'm coming at my world of experience from a different place. Does that make sense?
It does. I'll let you continue. I can respond to that if you'd like. If you'd like to keep going,
I
I'll
think
let
that's
you.
pretty much the idea.
Yeah.
I'd kind of like to find that other place in myself where judgmentalism simply doesn't arise because I don't know quite how to describe it.
Right. Well, I want to dash your fantasy right now. Okay, you're not going to get there. You're not going to get there. All you can do is to love being judgmental and to love the judgmental part of you and to see it from a distance and to be aware of it and to say, oh, that's just my mind. It's conditioned to do that. It's biologically predestined to do that. That beast over there is bigger than this one. I'm going to hunt that one. That one's faster. This one's slower. That one's bigger. That one's more dangerous. Look at all the things that the mind does. So it's when you're identified with the mind and when you take it seriously. And when more than that, when the mind then starts to penetrate down into our emotions and into the body, that yes, there is a problem. But the trick, like, I have judgmental thoughts. I got no problem with my dumbass judgmental thoughts that come and go. I think that, again, the war there, okay, the fight there, really is best sidestepped by allowing it to be basically in the space of love. So what you're saying, if I hear you correct, Robert, is, yeah, sure, you are looking for that space of awareness, and it is true. It is that space that you are looking for, and that is perfect. But there's no need. There's no that part of you that's judgmental. You will notice it just softening. It will soften, but it may not go away. It might still be there, if that makes sense. So instead of trying to push it away, sort of we like paradoxically welcome into the room. And when you welcome the thing that you're trying to avoid the most, okay, it loses its teeth and it softens. Mm-hmm. Does that help?
Yeah, I'm wondering also if you're equating judgmentalism with discrimination.
It could be.
Making distinctions.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a right there. Actually, is a very good. You're talking about judgmentalism in negative and positive, judging others, judging yourself, having sort of a venom of.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I'm just wondering if we can see it as a subset of a
sure.
broader kind of basic dualism. It's this, not that. It's
right.
like this, it's not like that.
Right. Right.
The kind of basic distinctions that we make.
You have to so if you want to go as broad as dualism, the trick, okay, to getting beyond dualism is to allow dualism in, to allow all duality in, and then you see it from the point of awareness, of consciousness, which is just one. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So you're allowing all of duality in, all right, and you're seeing, including judgmentalism of judging one person as being high or low, and another as smart or not smart, another is more spiritual and another's not more spiritual. All of those things, you allow all those in. Really what kind of boils down to, okay, let's take it back to here, because really that judgment is about yourself in the end. All of the judgments, of course, that we have about the rest of the world are this finding of a shadow, of a meeting of a shadow in ourself that is not loved. So you can have these, so to really heal that sense of non-duality, there really has to be a meeting of something that's actually a little deeper than just judgment, which is usually fear on a very large scale. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's when that's met, it's when that is met, it's when that fear of annihilation, okay, that fear of this meeting, this primal sense of separation is met, okay, and you've ended the total war, then you see, then all of a sudden all of the fangs of all of duality get removed. And you see duality is like this big old play, and it doesn't bother you anymore.
There we go. That's it.
Bingo. And you know what, Robert? Sometimes duality bothers me. How's that for a paradox? Sometimes it bothers me. God damn it, that guy's driving slow. And you know what? I'm welcoming that as I'm saying it. I'm not pushing it away. You know what? I don't like making... or doing the dishes at 5 a.m. in the morning. I really dislike it. And that's okay too. I'm allowing it in there. I'm allowing the play to take place. I'm not pushing any of it away. I'm surfing on it. You with me? Yeah. Our hearts long, our beings long for this, what you're I read your article, by the way, in Echo, right, which is really great. Mm-hmm. So you know it, you've tasted it, you got a great taste, okay? So, and this is what our bodies, when we're in the beginning of the awakening process, our bodies want to be here. They want to be here in the fullest way possible, and they want that bliss. They want that non-dual, non-separation, bang out to the edges of the universe, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. However, that's not, you can allow, that's going to be an experiential state, okay? And it's not going to go back down to this in the awakened state, but it will do this. It will gently come back down, and you'll be more aware of duality, more aware of mind. It's just the spiritual awakening is that you're never completely lost in illusion again. But what you're talking about right now is this pining, this longing to really meet truth. You know, dive off the diving board at the deep end of the pool, right? You know, and that is totally an honest thing to want. I mean, I know that's how my spiritual awakening was. Like, I wanted that. You know, I wanted, like, God damn, I'm suffering here. Can I have an end to this judgmentalism, this negativity as an anger point, you know, to this anger, to this frustration, this sadness, this existential depression for me. So there's nothing wrong with wanting that. And that's a wise longing. That's a longing that comes from here. And what you will discover is that when you have more and more of those moments like you had in the forest, okay, you will eventually become sated. You will eventually let go of even that longing. And you'll just be here now. And you'll be okay with the ups and downs. You'll be okay with things that are negative and things that are positive. And you'll have preferences. You'll have preferences for not being judgmental. You know, you'll have preferences for this work or for that work or what you do with your days. And you'll see those preferences, and you go, oh boy, I'm being a little neurotic there. Why am I, doing that? And you'll be okay with that too. You're allowing it all in. And this is what I know about awakening. Here sits what a lot of people see awakening as there's the pristine one, is perfectly eloquent and is perfectly awake and his aura is shiny and happy, right? That's all there is. No, sir. Here's the bleh, and here sits the shadow, and you better get your arm around your shadow because it ain't going nowhere. It ain't going nowhere. So be friends with it. It's going to be a pain in the ass the rest of your life. Us spiritual folks, it's more of a pain in the ass, unfortunately, because it's got the upper hand. The more you come and you do things like this, the more you get involved in eventually it loses the upper hand. Okay? And then you can love it and be okay with it.
But still in the car with you.
It's still in the car with you. My retarded kid brother just won't shut up. And you're okay with it.
Could you say more about loving the shadow, like with different terms, different metaphors?
Sure.
Different framing?
Yeah, sure. You good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So would you like me to, do you understand shadow, Robert?
Yes.
Okay. So loving the shadow. So I guess where I will start is with by talking about another school that's called Waking Down, as opposed to Waking Up. Okay, and I studied with them for quite some time, and he's a great teacher.
Got it.
Waking Down. Okay, so what they're really doing in this school is they're inviting the shadow in, and they're not pushing any of it away, and they are discovering consciousness first. Okay, discovering awakening. They're utilizing also what's called in Buddhism the direct path. Okay, so we're noticing awareness and consciousness right forward, but they're also in a really beautiful way. Okay, they're getting right down to the nitty gritty shadow stuff, and really in many ways kind of like the psychotherapeutic stuff, the stuff that we want a neat and clean sort of part of us, the spiritually sophisticated parts of us want to push away. Right? So it's really about welcoming in all the fumbling, negative, sad, unhappy parts of us that have been pushed away. The awakening that I know, and that I know that is taught in Waking Down, okay, you can awake to consciousness, all right? But it's not as satisfying as awakening to consciousness and the heart. And Waking Down is about waking up to the heart, of having this experience of loving the shadow be met all the way down in the body. Okay? I know I'm probably going off on a little tangent here let me recenter here and get a little clearer for you. So, meeting the shadow and loving the shadow is a call to have awakening meet us at the empathic, bodily, tacit level of feeling, where awakening isn't a dry experience you had in the woods. I'm presuming by your writing was this feeling of kind of dropped into your body, yes? Walking very slowly, eyes wide open, peripheral vision wide. Your hearing increases. I'm with you. Your hearing increases. There's this real slowing down.
Yeah.
And oh my God.
Yeah.
Look, reality without me getting in the way. It's so beautiful. It's exquisite. It is sublime. Yes. He nods his head. Yes. So,
You got it.
yeah, so loving the shadow, okay? So there's some, for many of us, and I did this too, I went through this period of non-abiding awakening where I would have those moments for a week or a month, okay, and then come back out. I'm like, it was like just horrible coming out of that. So loving the shadow is what the wisest thing that conscious self-awareness does, and inevitably is part of this process if you want to return to that. Once you've had that little taste, it's sort of in other words, it goes beyond now your notions, okay, your what your fantasies were about spiritual awakening. It goes now beyond, because you felt it in here. All right. So now, what's going to more than likely, and again, I'm going to, this is blue collar language here. I'm speaking in a general way. Most people, once they have a taste like that, they're going to bounce in and out of it. And now you start the school of loving your shadow. Now you start the school of finding all of those parts of you that are broken, lost, hurt, angry, etc., that want to be met in consciousness and want to be met in awareness. And you'll go through that. And you'll have, just like I spoke earlier, you have gradual periods of time and you'll have a radical shift. So am I doing an okay job of trying to, what I really try to do here, Robert, is to speak the language of this kind of blue collar body. You probably already noticed, I'm not much of an Advaitin, I'm not much of a non-dualist, I don't speak Buddhist language very well. I just try to, all of this, first of all, is coming from my own experience. So if I'm sometimes might have a hard time bridging the gap in language.
Maybe it would be helpful if we took an example.
Okay.
Worked through an example.
Okay.
Of some shadow work.
Okay.
Loving the shadow.
Okay. Alrighty. Very good. Robert, so I'm going to give you an example, just some of my own shadow work to start with, and then we'll do a little exercise, okay? So some of my shadow work, let me see, recall a moment. Have you ever heard of Arjuna Nikardal? You ever heard of him? He wrote a book called The Translucent Revolution. So I think it was 1999 or 97, somewhere in the late 90s. I invited him to come to my house and do a workshop. So he stayed in my house, I hung out with him for a whole weekend, etc. And he and I got to, know each other on a kind of personal basis, hey, how's it going, hanging out in the house, picking him up at the airport, etc. So he was comfortable with me, okay, and I got comfortable with him, and I felt safe. So I did a couple private sessions with him, all right? And what I mean by shadow work, okay, is him going, Jeff, you're not here. You're not here in this room right now. I want you to be here in this room right now, okay? And what that meant was that I wasn't being totally honest. In other words, I wasn't bringing forth something that was really at my heart's level. And what that was, okay, that shadow work right there was, I bawled my eyes out. I curled up and screamed and yelled on the floor for 10 minutes, letting all of this existential angst and suffering and pain that I had kept in my body, buried, ignorant to me, out. And he finally was able to coax that forward. So that is loving your shadow. That's seeing, that's bringing it out in the light of consciousness. And I know that can sometimes sound like therapy, but it's a little different from therapy in two ways. One, you're in the presence of someone who's dealt with their shadow to a certain degree. Not to a certain degree, let's call it to a real degree, okay? They've awoken, all right? So there's an energy in the room. And number two, you're doing it yourself. You're resonating with that person's energy, with their awakened consciousness. So all that pain and that suffering and that shadow that you've neglected, you're bringing it up, and in that moment you're seeing it in love. Consciousness is love. Awareness itself is love. So when all of that comes up while you're being present, completely transforms it, completely heals it. Does that make sense? So this is an example of what I did. Did it many times. Where I just was like, I got nothing to fucking lose. And, had quite a few breakdowns. And it's very common in most Advaita Vedanta, like smaller private circles with teachers or non-dual circles. Okay, when you really get down to the nitty-gritty of that kind of work, where there's this transpersonal therapeutic quality, which really meets that part of this that is really deeply seated in fear. And so that is what I mean by shadow work and love of shadow. So I do some exercises. Here's what I know it from my own experience and from teaching. It usually takes some time for any one individual to warm up to that level. Because a certain amount of trust in the energy of the room and in the people has to be available. And so sometimes that'll come out. So I've been in rooms with 20 or 30 people. Whew! There are tears all over the place. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. The people are able to open up. It's usually, like a weekend or something.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Sometimes it makes you calls, right?
And in other times, it will only happen in a private session. Because you're guarded. And you need to kind of warm up to it. You need to kind of get to that level of fear. And is it any wonder? Is it any wonder? Everyone's different with their meeting of fear and their meeting of pain and all the rest of this. Okay, everyone's different. But let me tell you my own experience. My own experience of meeting fear was there's a couple big times where it was horrific. I mean, I was like, oh fuck, why did I get involved in spirituality? Oh my God, what was I thinking type of fear? Like, holy shit, the death of me, a total annihilation, total loss of me, identity, self. What the fuck was I thinking? I want nothing to do with spirituality. And so then, I went and hid for a couple months until it came back. Because once, unfortunately, once the dragon shows its face, it's gonna come whether you like it or not. All you can do is just get there and prepare for it. It's just slowly say, okay, I can do battle with this dragon. I have a sword, and that sword is consciousness.
I have a couple of experiences being present, fully honest, fully transparent.
Mm-hmm.
But they were with MDMA.
What is MDMA? It's a drug.
Ecstasy.
Yeah.
I did it with my partner, and we were just right in each other's face. It was ecstatic. It was exceptional.
Yeah.
Exceptional. We were so present.
Yes.
And real.
Yeah.
I thought we got a lot of really good work done.
Yeah.
In that state.
Yeah.
And sometimes we are able to approach that even without assistance.
Mm.
You kind of, I don't know, in my experience, you kind of have to work into it.
Mm-hmm.
Work into it. Be really focused.
Mm.
Really willing.
Let me give you a little, if it's okay, just a little, right, because we're right here in this moment right now, okay? The awareness that you have right now, Robert, okay, doesn't need to be any shinier, any cleaner, any better, any higher, any more open, okay? It's totally it. It's totally okay, all right? This awareness that you have right now. So, what is perhaps your feeling of something missing, okay? Of getting back to that space, okay? So awareness is an emptiness, is in consciousness, okay? It's totally okay. You ain't gonna get any higher or shinier, right? It's a mystery. Be okay with it being a mystery, all right? So this work that I'm speaking of meeting it in all of those areas, it's sort of a pendulum that we swing back and forth in, okay? In here, a lot of times what happens is because we're so bereft of it out there in the world, the pendulum swings to consciousness Thank God. I get to breathe in awareness just for 2 hours. It's so beautiful. Okay? And then the pendulum swings, back into mind and into contraction of the body again. But this time it's different because you've experienced awareness in a very, very deep way. And now, for some reason, on this particular day, it's not as bad. This moment which caught you in the anger before. And then the pendulums, you might come back, and it keeps swinging, and it keeps swinging. And it loosens things up, okay? And it keeps loosening, and it keeps loosening. And then one of these times you're like, oh my God, I'm suffering. I'm going back and forth. It's not that I've been unconscious to suffering, but I really feel like it now. I'm becoming more vulnerable, more sensitive to I'd rather be open and conscious and loving. I'd rather be that. And so finally what happens is in a moment you break down and you meet your shadow. You break down. You become vulnerable. Your heart was once frozen and it's starting to melt and some of those chunks come off. So it takes kind of this pendulum swinging back and forth between consciousness and then going unconscious again. You know? It's just gently part of the process. Am I making sense? It's not the awakening that I know, okay, blue collar enlightenment, waking down, it's a messy fucking process. It's not some neat, clean thing like, oh, there's a line in the sand and whoop, I'm awake now, look how shiny I am, yay. You know, I did all this work, I read all the books, and I went and saw all the teachers, and I'm awake and it's neat and clean. It just happened just like that. Does not work that way. No, sir. It's a bloody, stinking, messy-ass mess. I wouldn't have it any other way. All that mess is what's bringing forth your shadow. And then, oh my God, then you get to be here. and then to jump to a few years after awakening, another kind of element settles in where there's just, in Buddhist terms, it's, one could say that samsara and nirvana become the same. There's no difference between the two.
I like it.
Mm-hmm. And that's what happens. And then sometimes you're just bobbing along, totally content just being the idiot that you are, you know? And other times you have this expansive divine opening. And it comes and it goes, and you don't really care. And it's all good. Ultimately, yes, spiritual awakening should bring you this. It should bring the end of suffering on an existential level. Spiritual awakening should bring you this sense of ongoing, permanent sense of okayness on an existential level. I say existential level because there can still be preferences and disturbances on the top. But down here, unconditionally, you are tethered to love. And that state is, as I said before, is when samsara and nirvana become the same. And it's all good. Yet there's good and bad within it being all good. And you're okay with that too. See, there's no getting around. One of the things that I like to point to time and time again in this class is paradox and mystery. Because man, it is ripe and full of it. It is ripe and full of it. And unless, because logical thinking, trash can. Trash can. It's, anybody in here done a magic eye? You know what the magic eye thing is? You know?
Yeah.
So the trick to the magic eye actually is sort of like when you finally see it, you're relaxed, sort of. Because you're going, I can't, where is it? Finally you give up. And you relax. You kind of just get unfocused and let your eyes drift. Oh, there it is. Awakening is in many ways like that. Where you just, all this effort, finally you're neurotic about it and then you give up on it. And it's in then finally when you let it go, when you fail, that's where it is, in the failure of it. I didn't succeed. Spiritual awakening is not about success. It's about totally failing. It's about totally failing. All the way up to the last micromillimeter step on the path, you're wanting to succeed. And then you're like, it ain't gonna happen.
It's the, what do they call it, red flag or white flag that you put up in a war? You know, it's the white flag. You put up the, when it's finally when you put up the white flag and you've lost, then you're like, oh, wait a minute, I lost. Awesome. There's nothing more to look for. There's nothing more to seek. Oh my God, I'm done. Yay. And then life becomes beautifully superficial, beautifully shallow, and mountains go back to being mountains, and rivers go back to being rivers, and